Hello, my name is Anthony Tyson, and this is Worthy Watchers Weekly, the weekly podcast where we go in depth on anything within the motion art medium, TV shows, animation, movies, etc. It's all game here. But of course, I'm joined by my bro Ransom.
What's up?
And this week, we wanted to do something special to celebrate the upcoming release of the Snowpiercer TV series that TNT is doing. And we were doing that by doing a rewatch of a kind of what I'll call an in-depth discussion analysis of the movie of which it's based off of, which is Bong Joon-ho's Snowpiercer. And I'm not sure whether to call these Is It Worthy anymore, because I always feel like when we talk about these movies, we already think it's worthy because we're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
For the sake of not finding a good name until I figure out how to remake it, we're going to call it just an in-depth discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. So in case you're new to this series, we break these in-depth spoiler reviews kind of in 4 parts. The details, the critical consensus, what I'm going to call now key scene discussion instead of pros and cons, and then the final verdict where we kind of come into an overall feeling of the movie and where it stands for us. So without further ado, let's jump into part 1. The details.
Yeah.
There is a lot here, so bear with me, everyone. The release date for this film in the United States and kind of worldwide, although, you know, there's a ton of different release dates, is July 11th, 2014, my birthday, what up? And the South Korea premiere was actually a year before, almost, July 29th, 2013. So keep it in mind. And that was in Seoul when they had their first premiere of this film. The runtime for the movie is 2 hours and 6 minutes, or 127 minutes. And I don't know. I think it's largely well-paced, although I think the general complaints that I can see from most people is that some of the movie feels really good and some of the movie takes a while to get going.
Yeah.
You know, be that what it may. The director is Bong Joon-ho, as we mentioned before, and the writers were Bong Joon-ho and Kelly Masterson for the adaptation / screenplay. But what most people don't know is that Bong Joon-ho credits that it was based off of a French post-apocalyptic graphical novel, which was called, and I'm going to butcher this a little bit, La Transpercionnage by Jacques Laube, Benjamin Legrand, and Jean-Marc Richet.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right, because the way that he shoots the film and some of the action does feel like it's not entirely realistic, though somewhat of a sense of practicality being drugged down, right?
Well, and the fact that the story feels very much like it's sort of that, like, going after that, like, pseudo French Revolution.
Very much so. One of the reviews that I have to bring up later kind of pinpoints on that. So very, very well said. Composer Marco Beltrami, and he actually is known for World War Z, I, Robot, and Blade 2. Yeah, so he has been a little around the block, though not as well known as some other composers we might have celebrated in the past. The cinematography. Cinematography is something I really want to shout out because of how much I love the way they shoot things. Kyung Pyo Hong, which he actually did Burning, a movie I have not seen yet from South Korea, but I've heard is incredible, and I should definitely watch. And then he also returned to do the cinematography for Parasite. So something real cool there. Bong Joon-ho and he obviously get along, and they can work really well together, you know?
Yeah.
Memorable actors. Get ready for this crazy ass list. All right. Chris Evans, leading role as Curtis. We all know who he is. Don't need to be more said about that. Kang Ho Song, who is also Namgung Minso, or as many people will know him, the security officer who opens the doors on the train. That was his character's name, though, technically. But If you are still not familiar with him, he is also the amazing talent we got to see play the dad of the poor family that kind of tries to take over the, new mansion or whatever in Parasite. So something to keep in mind when you watch this movie and look back on him, because you can obviously tell this dude is talented.
Mm-hmm.
So Ed Harris, Wilford, John Hurt, sadly, one of his last final performances as the role of Gilliam in this movie. Tilda Swinton, Mason. I think we all have an appreciation for T Swift in this, or T Swint. T Swint. And then Jamie Bell as Edgar, Octavia Spencer, Tanya, Ewan Bremer as Andrew, one of the people that I think Ransom's going to bring up a lot in his favorite scenes. And then Allison Pill as that one real creepy ass teacher in the second act. That was just weird. Like when she like does that fluttering the eyes thing where she like
she like plays the piano. Yeah.
Oh my god, that was selling
It's
that.
excellent though.
It is, and she's really good in her various roles. While I don't super love her character in Picard, I think she did the best job that she could at giving dimension to that character in that show. Mm-hmm. So something to keep in mind. Luke Pasqualino. Okay, I got it right. Luke Pasqualino, that awesome ass dude that knifes the guy in the real awesome way. You know, that badass. Yeah. So he's cool. But little thing, he also played William Adama in BSG's Blood and Chrome special. So special shout out to you, sir.
Ooh.
Yes, you have not seen that special. It's actually not as good as like BSG, but I did like him in the role, and there is a really cool ass fighter pilot scene that eventually Ransom will get to, and I just want you to just love how ridiculous it is because he's badass.
Hello.
So yeah, he can sell badassery. Steve Park, he was Fuyu, or that awesome dude that blows the whistle and screams "Impact!" You know, like super loud. That was so badass. And then he's also in 1989's Do the Right Thing and 1996's Fargo.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I was like, that guy looks so familiar.
Yeah. So he is awesome. There's also Ko Asung, who played Yona, or as many would be familiar with, Chrono. Paul Lazar as Paul, aka Protein Block Chef, which a lot of people will remember from Silence of the Lambs as one of the two researchers that were studying butterflies that asks Agent Starling out on a date.
Yeah. Yep.
I remember that dude. And then also Carr Middleton, which was the painter in this film, that dude that's doing like the charcoal sketches.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also in Sin City and Kill Bill Volume 2. So just top to low, whether these are big roles, small roles, this is a movie that definitely proves that adage that there is no such thing as small roles, because every single actor like has I think a memorable performance in this movie. The screenplay and everything is pretty great. It's well shot and all that. But I think the biggest diamond in this film is the acting talent. Like all of the people committed to their roles 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, insane amount of talent, new and old. That does bring us now to part 2. Critical consensus. Like I said, part 1 was just a little steamroller, and we've got an interesting bit of highs and lows here with critics and people on Letterboxd that I always like bringing in. So according to Rotten Tomatoes, this film stands at a 94% critical, but a criminally low divide of 72% audience. And I think that's just because some people just, I think there's a little bit of a barrier of entry with believability that a lot of people have a hard time with.
Yeah. Well, and also I think throughout Bong Joon-ho's career, a lot of people have kind of disliked him simply for the fact of that he's very much been in like the Hollywood circles and like knows how to make movies that are very much like that, but he's not from America. And I feel like there is a bit of like a divide on like, oh, well, it's not like a Western movie.
Well, and like he does this thing where he's very good at getting this message that's
Mm-hmm.
hidden underneath everything that he's doing. And Parasite's like a little bit more of a
Top
detailed
tier.
version of that. And as we were saying in this movie, it's a little bit more metaphorical, so to speak. So
Mm-hmm.
if you don't see those metaphors, you could kind of come off this movie as just being that weird movie with a ton of action in a train, you
Yeah.
know, but that's not really what it's about.
Yeah.
Um, First up, we've got Nicholas Bell from Ioncinema, an article he posted on June 26, 2014, and he gave it 4 stars out of 5. And he kind of says, and I'll do a little bit of paraphrasing here, after a much publicized haggling between the director and Weinstein's wish to trim 20 minutes away from the American palate, good to bring up here, again, for the sake
Mm.
of reference, fucking Weinstein Company. I tell you, these bastards. Um, it was a glorious win for art over commerce with the release of the title as the director originally intended it. So cool that Bong Joon-ho managed to fight for it so much that even the Weinstein Company, a company notorious for, obviously, especially at its head, abusing people that we now know, it's kind of cool to see that Bong Joon-ho fought so hard for it that even he could kind of come over the annoyingness of that company and how they were
Mm.
trying to run productions.
Yeah.
So very cool. And I'm going to skip a little bit here as he does offer, some quick and poignant analysis of the characters, but we're obviously going to be doing that. He kind of finishes with, it was the end of times, it was the worst of times, and one of the best of times you'll have in the theater this year. So interesting point there. I'm also going to start including hyperlinks to some of these reviews. So catch that in the notes if you're interested for this. And then the follow-up coming up here with a Andrew Galdi and other. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it in their show notes. And then Rotten Tomatoes didn't list her, but Andrew Galdi and this other lady were doing a joint review of this film because it is a YouTube video review, one of the first that I'm including in on this segment. And it was from their channel called Moviebitches.
Nice.
They drink wine and they review films, kind of the an interesting thing for their time. Before Matt Belisai, kind of made it popular.
Yeah.
They gave it a 5.5 out of 10. Yeah. Let this sink in a little bit. The quote from Rotten Tomatoes that they got from this video was, "It's a hot mess," which is definitely like, it feels like a super generalization of what they were really talking about from the review on the film.
Mm-hmm.
But they seem very upset at many of the details of the film about how the screenplay reveals the why and how of why people are here, what they're doing, how the train works, things like that. But I honestly had to stop when they compared the movie to a video game on how each car was a new level of the game. And then they said how the dialogue in between each section was boring, like the dialogue in a video game cutscene that they want to skip. In which they supercut a little video of a scene from Mass Effect freaking 2 in which Shepard's talking to Tali Zora. No.
No.
Mass Effect 2 cutscenes are great, and you gotta shut the fuck up now. I'm sorry. I totally disagree with not only that comment, but the fact that they use that film as a point in their like video game cutscenes suck discussion. Man, it just rubbed me off the wrong way. I literally had to stop there. I think that was at like the 4-minute mark or something. I couldn't finish the review. I was so mad. But they were one of the people that definitely had a different opinion than a lot of the other critics. So for the sake of a variance of opinion, I'm including it. Now, I'm going to go to some Letterboxd reviews real quick. And I do want to mention that I appreciate all the Polar Express references that many people point out. So just want to say that. And then the Letterboxd breakdown of the movie ratings is at a 3.7 out of 5 largely. So mixed of critical and audience, we're standing at a largely good film from what people seem, but definitely in that 7 to 8-ish category. So Matt from Letterboxd gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. He said it was the best Captain America movie of the year. Now. He says this on July 10th, 2014, which is 3 months after Winter Soldier was released in America. So fucking shade, sir. I do not agree with that at all, but I appreciate that you thought that way.
Yeah.
Demi Adjuyigbe, I am messing that last name up a little bit, gave it 3 stars out of 5. He says, I wish Tilda Swinton did more comedy. Doesn't even have to be on a train if she wants. I would say to that, have you seen Isle of Dogs or Hail Caesar? Just saying. Yeah. She is funny-ish in those roles, even though I hate Hail Caesar, the movie. Anyway, Andrea from Letterboxd also gives it 3.5 stars out of 5. She says, I was born in the wrong generation. I wish I lived in 2031, where humans were mostly extinct and the proletariat revolted against the aristocracy.
That's great.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Andrea. This now does bring us to the key scene discussion, in which we kind of couple together 2 to 3 key points for each of us that we really want to talk about and discuss, whether it's good or bad. So we were talking about this before, and I guess I'll start out with, I do have a con to this movie, and it does kind of resemble what I think in a less dramatic way that Moviebitches was saying before, which there's a shootout moment in the train where it's curving and that big ass hulking, like what looks like a assassin dude was
one of
shooting
the brothers,
which was shooting with some kind of like AR assault rifle through a window to another car that was curved that had Chris Evans' character and a couple of those others in it, and Chris Evans like trying to shoot back with an MP5, and it's just, let alone the fact that these bullets are going through the windows, which you would think that this train, being the invulnerable fortress that it is, that wouldn't make any sense, let alone the fact that Chris Evans is shooting back with an MP5 that he has no training with against the dude that does have training, and he somehow manages to get it close enough to the dude. It was just a moment that took me out of the movie, because the movie is largely restrained with that ridiculousness, and that moment was just a little too much for me. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think that moment could have been cut, because it offers nothing for any of the characters, and it just tries to make that one lumbering dude seem like a threat, but that point is already gotten across before and later after when he kills people. So just saying.
Yeah.
However, we do want to go to some pros of the movie, in which I do want to say I absolutely love the fight choreography of the movie and the way they shoot the fights in an enclosed space, whether it's the beginning moment when they are taking those like kind of like shells that they combined into one large battering ram, essentially, to get through the different gates that would have to lock in that 4-second interval, which they had some great tension build up to. That moment was super awesome. And then let alone the moment when, they go in under the tunnel and, all the guys have the night vision goggles on. And then the moment with the torchbearer, like literally so many great moments of balance between this claustrophobia feel that the movie has, but also showing you enough detail to kind of get a scope of the fights from each side. Mm-hmm. So I thought, again, shout out to that cinematographer, for what he did here. Cause man, like Kyung Pyo Hong, obviously a credit to Bong Joon-ho in this. So yeah, but that's a great lead up to one of Ransom's key scenes.
Yeah. So with that tunnel scene, there's a moment where like, they're racing with the fire, and then like Mason, Tilda Swinton's character, realizes like, oh fuck.
Shit,
like
now she's like pointing across. I love that.
Yeah, and like now we're at the disadvantage. Fuck. And so they're going at it. They're starting to win this battle. But
great Lord of the Rings moment.
yeah. But one of the brothers grabs Edgar, Curtis's friend, Chris Evans' character, his friend, and like obviously in a bit of a standstill, because you can see that like Curtis is trying to go for Mason. Like he wants to capture her so that they then retreat.
Yeah, so they can get through to the next gate, because if they
Yeah,
have her, that means they win this fight.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like checkmate for the moment.
Yeah. Um, but, you know, like he has to then decide, is he going to risk losing the chance to move ahead into the train? Or is he going to save his friend and ultimately like have to withstand more loss of life as like all of them start moving up?
Yeah, it's really cool in the moment, because it does kind of show you how, he's a man on a mission, and he is
Mm-hmm.
willing to do what it takes to have them win the fight, which in this moment means leaving his friend behind. But
Right.
as I think you're going to bring up in your next point, that does have an interesting moment with a certain discussion he has.
Yeah, yeah. So my next point going into that, you know, you do get like that sense of like um you know, choice of like morality,
Mm-hmm.
like ethics or morality in that instance. And then like they keep going forward, you know, more tensions being built up, and then they get like right to the almost to the end of the train, like right before they're about to go talk to Wilford.
Yeah, literally
um
before the engine room when they're like locked out. Yeah.
yeah, and he like sits down, and then he like starts, you know, like you can tell he's like starting to like really understand like everything that just happened.
Sure. Yeah.
uh
It's a moment of realization for his character, all of the sacrifices he's had to make to the point, which strives home this monologue that he has.
yeah, yeah. And so like in that monologue, you really get to understand how grave of a situation that was for him. um because you understand that Edgar, he was this child that Curtis almost killed. He had killed his mother to survive and to like eat her.
Cannibalism.
Right. Like everyone was starting to turn on each other, and so he killed his mother so that he could eat Edgar. But then as you
When he
but
says, by the way, sorry to interrupt, just as a point of context, when he says that babies tasted the best and he's crying about it, I believe that weird,
yeah.
crazy moment where it's like,
Oh yeah.
oh my God, you're terrible. But then, you know,
It,
that's
it
life.
yeah, you know, it wasn't for him, it wasn't like a choice. It was him being like I've done what I've needed to
Survive.
survive.
Yeah.
um and it's kind of like it, like the fact that it's all led to this, like this moment.
Yeah.
um and so like that conversation is just like, it's a really like it's so odd, and that's what I love about it, is the fact that it both increases the tension of like what is going to happen next for him as a character, but it's also just like a bit of this like relieving moment to like take a minute to like, after all of that like advantage on the train, to then like take a moment to like discuss like the fact that he's had to sacrifice his morality to get to the point, to the goal that he's always tried to achieve.
Yeah, and I think this is a good moment to then take it into kind of my third, kind of your third, which we're going to couple in together, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a great way to set the tone for the ultimate reveal of the final conclusion of the film, which is the engine room with Wilford. And the fact that you take in this whole conversation in which he describes himself as a terrible person, essentially. He's not a hero, which, to the discredit of what somebody is saying earlier about being the best Captain America movie, this is not Captain America.
Oh no, no, no.
Curtis is not a beacon and like of hope or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. He's literally the leader of a rebellion that we're trying to make it better for themselves in the long run.
Yeah.
And he was willing to sacrifice people to do it. Captain America has this weird balance of trying to find another way, another solution, a better solution, right? Instead of the ones that are obviously in front of you. And I think the moment where that comes to fruition is when Wilford goes on and on about how everyone's a cog in their place, which is a great way to capitalize on the idea that was first brought up in the film by Tilda Swinton's character, in which she was reprimanding themselves for not understanding their places in the great cog that is this train, because everybody has their place, their function, their reason for existing, so the train can keep on going on, right? Cogs in the machine. And when Wilford repeats that again, and then you get the reveal that there's the philosophical idea of humanity continuing on by being this machine, but when you look at it morality wise, it's terrible, so why
Mhm.
keep on going? And then you literally see the representation of that in the child in the engine that are being used as replacement cogs for what's missing. It's a great way to bridge that gap together, of what the movie is trying to present in its ethics and its message, right?
Yeah.
Which I think does change the ending of the film for some, if you pay attention to that point. And yeah, I loved the reveal. I thought that that was amazing the way they did that, and the screenplay in the moment. You can see how this was a great way of Bong Joon Ho starting to flex his muscles that he would later use in Parasite. Because I
Mhm.
think my complaint of the movie is that this movie is a little bit more um, philosophical rather than a detailed explanation of why something is wrong, right? Like super honed in, because the script for Parasite takes what this one was kind of doing and just puts it on another level entirely. So that's a complaint against it. But Ransom, you were bringing up that you really thought that this was a great way to help ramp up the tension of the final moment, in which obviously the train gets derailed and they're left there.
Yeah. So, we've been talking about like how all these moments like they have this great amount of tension that you feel throughout the movie. You get this
Build
sense
up.
of just big build up. Yeah. And you like throughout the movie, and like I remember the first time watching this, I was still in high school. Um I did not like the ending.
Me neither. I hated it the first time, and then I feel a little bit better on it now.
Yeah. Um and I like I can appreciate what the ending is now. But it's because of the fact that like it builds up to this moment of kind of this like realization that like it doesn't need to be there. It Bon Joon-ho kind of brings in this like anarchist ideology of like if the order and the structure doesn't work for everyone, then why have it?
Then blow up the machine that keeps it running. It was a
Right.
funny moment where Ransom and I were talking about this movie, and you know, there are a few films that I find that make me think of our dad so much, and this movie is that, where literally my dad would go on and on, our father would go on and on about Max Stirner and his philosophy, taking you up to the mountain, then leaving you there stranded,
Yeah.
and you have to find your way back down. That is literally what happens in this film to a T, because the train's derailed, the machine is gone, and they're literally left with their fur coats, two people, and a polar bear that they see that kind of shows them that, oh, maybe we can live in this crazy inhospitable wilderness. It's like, it's weird because you want to get on that point of, well, shit, now they're stranded and they're going to die, right? You want to
Yeah.
feel that it's helpless. But when you look at it in the philosophical way, there is somewhat of a sense of, well, now that shitty morality that kept that machine going is gone now. And you have to find a new way to live, you know, because obviously, if humanity was making all of those sacrifices to keep itself going, then what
Hmm.
is the point of it all? You know, when it's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
So, and I think again, something that we were talking about, and I just want to bring up for super specific reason, the fact that Chris Evans' character does finally give up his arm to get the child out of
Yeah,
there, I
the
think was a good
redemption.
point of
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, like it's weird to think about, because I really want to poo poo it still, because it's just like, well, now they're just there. But then again, when you look at the
Mhm.
philosophy behind the choice, it's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that brings us to our final conclusion. I feel like we were just giving that away right there in our discussion of that key scene. It's a movie that I find has grown on me more with
Mhm.
time.
Yeah. Like it's there was a definitely a moment watching it where I I felt weird about like the um idea of like, oh, staying in place. Um like thinking about this movie in terms of like everything that we're going through right now. Um it's 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 strange because of the fact that like you understand both sides of the ideology in this movie. Like there
Wilford's whole justification, right? He literally lays it out there, and in a sick sense, you're right.
yeah, yeah. Um and like that kind of makes you feel gross and you're like, ugh. But in that instance, like that's why I really appreciate that ending of just like being able to start anew. Like maybe we really just need some sort of reformation.
You know, it's
Um,
kind of interesting. I don't know why this just like flooded into my mind, but it kind of reminds me of like a more dramatic and dark version of like the Titan AE ending, where like literally you're on a new planet or whatever and you're
yeah,
starting again. Except in Titan AE, like all of humanity comes and being like, "Yeah, man, we got our own new Earth again." And then
yeah.
you hear the rock music come out, and this it's just like, and polar bear, sadness, snow, and two people.
Are they going to live? Who knows? It's
And can they remake humanity? You know, it is a little bit of an Inception like ending, also in that sense, where it's like
yeah,
you kind of just have to take away from it what you will. If you believe in humanity and the idea that they could make a better future and survive, then there you go. There's your
yeah,
answer. If you don't, something shittier and darker for you.
yeah. And so I think to conclude this conversation, and like to conclude our thoughts on this movie, it's definitely one of those movies that's like not for everyone. You know,
Yeah,
it
agreed.
yeah, like I to an extent I can understand what that review was saying about like the game levels and like thinking of it as a hot mess.
Well,
Um
and it is like to be true, like each different stage of the train is like a new environment that they're reacting to. So I get it.
yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
yeah. But if you're definitely someone like us who really can appreciate a movie not necessarily for what's in the foreground but what's in the background, and like really look into the meaning of the film, that then like this is definitely a movie that you're going to love and appreciate.
Yeah, and I think for people too that also appreciate the foreground, I will say this. I think there's
Yeah.
enough action in there that some people will just look at it as that movie that had those really cool fight scenes that reminds
Mm-hmm.
them of like a Train to Busan or uh, a raid like experience, right?
Yeah.
Where the fighting is really cool choreographically speaking. So yeah, I think the movie is worthy of a watch, and if you'll know as you're watching it if the movie's for you or not, right? And
Yeah.
if you want to stop it and not watch it, I guess I can't hate you for it, right? Because I
Yeah.
get it. But at the same time, I would be like, man, you're missing a really interesting movie about philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely allows you to reach different ideology that isn't very much discussed these days, which is kind of
Agreed.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and like we were talking about before, I it really did make me miss Dad a little bit,
Yeah.
watching it.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But hey, while that wraps us up on our conversation of the film, the conversation isn't over yet. Let us know what you think of what many Americans would consider Bong Joon-ho's premiere film, and head over to our Facebook page or hit us up at Twitter at Worthy Watchers and leave us just a quick summary of your thoughts, and we'll maybe feature some of your comments in next week's episode. Don't forget to let your friends know where to find us, as if you could let them know or leave a review for us, it just helps more people find us down the line, which, you know, gets everybody in on the conversation. Yeah. So thank you again for listening, and we will see you on the next Worthy Watchers Weekly.
See you then.